tomorrow. So, what are today's trends? Well, expectations are higher than ever before. The UK unemployment rate is very low. Candidates are online anyway. Most of your recruitment processes will be online now. My background is in print press, and I worked for the East Anglian Daily Times, and they used to charge £80 a column centimetre. So if you wanted to advertise, have a full page ad, it was £800. And we would tell you when the recruitment section was shut, but the adverts just looked terrible. They were just there to tell you what the role did, nothing about what it would be like working there or what the candidate can expect. But that's all changed now, and that's a great thing about the market. People who are your candidates are consumers online. They're using your website, but they obviously use other websites. They use Uber. I hear there's a website called Tinder that people use as well. But they have these expectations about how quickly things should happen online, the kind of communication they should have, these little chat windows. Can I help you when they're on a website? And these are all things that we can use within our own experience when we're recruiting candidates to make sure the candidate is and at the centre of what we do. And it was talked about earlier, that person-centred approach. Candidates do have a lot of power. Most candidates will go to 7 different job boards, let alone your own local employer site, which you want them to be going to as well. So there's a lot of people competing for their attention when they're recruiting, and competing for their attention when they're on their phone. A Facebook message will come up. So you need to think about that candidate journey and make sure that people can dip in and out, and can it be done really quickly as well. Social media is key. The first few years ago, probably even 2 years ago, people were saying, are we going to put this on social media? It isn't really a case of are we going to put it on social media, it's which social media is right for this kind of role. And one of the mistakes that a lot of organisations make, across all sectors, is that they do the same thing for every single role. But actually a graduate is going to be hanging out in a different place online to a head of service or a director or a chief exec. So we tend to think of a recruitment process as being standard. But one of the things that we've learned is each different campaign needs to have a different approach. And it's one of the things we do at Jobsgopublic is we take on board the fact that a social worker is going to be different to, an OT if you're looking to recruit in that area, to a head of service. EVP, it's obviously critical. You've all got websites, but EVP is more than just an About Us section on that website. Some of the things that Wynne was talking about having a video on there from a key person in that organisation, painting a picture for that candidate so they can see what it's like to work in that organisation, a day in the life of a role in that job, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But that EVP changes, and it needs to be true to your organisation. There's no point trying to pretend because you've got a local competitor who's really good and maybe they've got a beer fridge on a Friday or a table tennis table or something like that. If that isn't the type of organisation and the type of culture that you have within your business, then you need to stay true to that. But do paint a picture so that they can understand, the candidates can understand what they can expect when they join, because that will help your retention. There's nothing worse than bringing someone on, painting a vision of how wonderful it's going to be here without being realistic about the challenges that they're going to face. The apprenticeship levy, it isn't going to go away, but there are ways that you can really take advantage of it. You as employers that are in the room, you've got wide departments. Over 30% of apprentices says they want to work in different departments, and that's a real strength for most of the organisations I've seen here today. You can talk about transferring into different roles, getting a feel for every single area in the business, because apprentices, they probably won't be that clear on what they want to do. So that variety and difference can really make a difference. One of the things I would say on apprenticeship levies is that a lot of people don't know that they can recruit graduates into that role. They think it's purely for school leavers. Graduates is an area that you can tap and use in those apprentices. Senior recruitment, very different. 90% of individuals in senior recruitment will only respond to a job advertisement if it's put in front of them. So trying to do things just on a jobs board isn't going to work. You need to be targeting those senior candidates in the place that they're hanging out online. Maybe it's LinkedIn, maybe there are some specific groups, some local groups on LinkedIn that could be relevant. Maybe it's Facebook or something like that. But you should think about the time of day. Does anyone want to have a guess when the best time of day is, or the day of the week to approach someone in senior recruitment? Pardon? Sunday. You've done this before, Natasha. Thank you. Yeah, 6 p.m. on Sunday is apparently the best time to reach out to people in senior recruitment. Big data, you know, it's been talked about for ages, and there's a lot of ways that you can use data to help learn. So on our applicant tracking system, you can media track. And again, I'll talk about that later. So you can see which of the media are driving the results for particular roles. So if you've got a challenging role in OT, in social care, in highways, in planning, whatever role it might be, have a look at tracking those applications. You know, often on websites, you'll see where did you apply at a drop-down list. Our experience shows those drop-down lists where you applied, they're just choosing the first option or the answer they think you want to hear, which is your own employer website, for instance. But it often doesn't match out into reality, and we see that big mismatch between where people are actually coming from, where they actually found it first, and where they're actually applying. Google Analytics, I don't know whether many of you have got that on your employment sites, but to understand at what stage in that interview application process people are leaving. Understand, you know, they're going on looking at a job, are they bouncing off? You know, what is it that is stopping them staying on your site? Should you have relevant, you know, other related jobs below that, like Amazon are great at, you know, you buy a book and then you see all these other examples of what other people have bought a similar book. Well, people who've applied for this role might also be interested in these other 2 or 3 different roles which are very similar. And lastly, time to hire. You know, it's something that, you know, from some conversations from the round table, Lancashire and BT have trouble with because of the disjointed recruitment process they have. But that time to hire is critical, and if you've got a good applicant tracking system, you can see where that's falling down and where the gaps are. So, what should you be doing tomorrow? Well, there are 3 stages to the process. There's finding the talent, there's telling them your story, and then the process, the actual recruitment process itself. So attraction is about how you find those candidates. Yep, do you use social media as part of your recruitment strategy or attraction strategy? Again, as I say, each of those different social media are going to be relevant to particular roles. Think about the role you're trying to recruit for. Maybe do some searches online, maybe ask previous candidates, you know, where are you going online? What blogs do you read? What websites are you using? And try and advertise or put your vacancy in those routes. Social media, the great thing about it is a lot of it's free. Yes, you can do animated video advertisements on Facebook, which costs a bit of money, but you can easily get your role up on LinkedIn, Twitter, and make it engaging. Don't just put the job title in there and the location. You know, paint a picture for the candidate in the characters that you've got to be able to use. Think about the websites, as I say, and where your applications are coming from. There was a chap called John Wanamaker who said 50% of my advertising budget's wasted, but I don't know which 50%. Well, with media tracking, you can actually find out for those particular roles which media sources are giving you the best results. Is it your website? Is it social media? Is it LinkedIn, etc.? Do you use Google advertising? Anyone want to guess what percentage of searches start on Google, job searches? Not Natasha. Someone else. Stephanie. Very close, 80%, 81% of searches start on Google. I thought it'd actually be higher, but they are using employer websites and jobs boards as well, but they're starting on Google. So if you're not on Google, if your site doesn't come up high, you know, whatever area it is you're in, if it's police force in Yorkshire or nurses in Cheshire, type that into Google and see how high your site comes up on the ranking. It's absolutely critical if all those searches are starting in Google. But think about the times to put out a job as well. Sunday evenings, we've already discussed, is important for senior, but Monday mornings, you know, I know most of you will be going into work on a Monday morning feeling joyful, I do, but some people don't. So they're travelling in on a train, they're looking at their phone. That's a great time to get a message in their Twitter timeline so that they can see, actually, you know, I'm feeling a bit down about my job, why not look around? And if your job's there, they'll respond, maybe even the train home. And passive candidates. With this competitive market, the UK unemployment rate's still 4.2%. It's the lowest it's been since 1975, which I wish I could say was before I was born, but sadly it's not true. But 4.2% of people are out of work. That means, nearly 96%, so the people you're going to be targeting are in a job right now. So advertising a jobs board on your own site is great, but if they're not actively looking to move, what can we do to target that 96% who are actively working right now and not actively looking to move? You need to get your job in front of them in the places they're hanging out online, like social media, like Google. Telling your story, EVP. Again, as I said, it does need to apply to the particular role. And one of the things we do at Jobsgopublic is design a particular microsite for particular campaigns. So if you're looking for social work, don't just use your standard website, because that will talk about you as if you are a council, they'll be talking about bins and other surfaces and the like. You might have an About Us section, but actually you want to talk to that cohort, that talent pool. So we'll build a microsite that talks to that talent pool, but you can do that yourself, even if it is, on your jobs vacancy page, looking for a role in social work, click on a link, and you have a page where you can talk to social workers about what it's like working in that organisation, why they should apply for your business. Social work is an area where, again, it's very competitive. One of the things that I think Jonathan talked about is about putting yourself in the candidate's shoes and going through that application journey. We've all seen these back to the floor programs where chief execs will go into a store or a warehouse and see what it's like. It's something I did when I started at Jobsgopublic, is to listen into what our customers were saying on the phone, going out to meetings just to hear what our customers are saying. Try and do the same on your own website and put yourself in the candidate's shoes. When was the last time we did that? Because it can really help you find out where the drop-off, because every single minute they're spending online answering an irrelevant application question, that's a candidate you've lost. Every single click, that's another lost candidate. Does your website work on a mobile phone, for instance? Absolutely critical. Again, it's around the 70–80% of candidates who are applying online via a mobile phone. If they're having to pinch and zoom, it can be very frustrating. And yeah, it's just a really important part of the process. Benefits in the left, in public sector, which is where we work most, there are great benefits. The holiday's often good, the pension's often good, but if you're looking to attract people from a wider audience, private sector, for instance, they often won't know that. So make that clear as soon as they start applying, actually why they should apply. What are the key benefits that will apply? Liv, our marketing head, did some research, multi-generational research, looking at the 16 to 24 cohort and the 50 plus. Unsurprisingly, the benefits that attract the most are different. 50 plus, it's about pension, and about holiday. At that 16 to 24 area, it's about career development. The communication's absolutely key. We've all heard horror stories of candidates who apply and don't ever hear anything, not even a yes or a no. Forget regret management, they don't hear anything at all. If you have got a long recruitment process, Jonathan, I know your recruitment process will be long in the North Yorkshire Police. Make sure that you're communicating throughout. Lancashire, you've got that process where it's partly with BT, partly with your council, and then back to BT again. Who is going to be talking to that candidate, keeping them warm if it is a lengthy process and you've got DBS checks to go through? The clicks and the stages of the recruitment process. Again, very simple, very easy to do. How important is the role? What are the steps of the process? How long is it likely to take? Paint that picture for the candidate so they know before they start. So what's coming round the corner? What does the future hold? It's something that has been talked about in the groups and the presentations, but candidate experience is key. That communication, how they're applying, when you're getting that message out, absolutely critical. Augmented and virtual reality, they're a couple of words that people bandy around and not necessarily everyone understands what it means. But if you go on Facebook, you can see there's a chatbot called Ask Jeff that Sky Bet used. They were one of the first to use AI within the recruitment process. And it's simple language, so you don't have to type it in a Google search way. It's just natural language, how you would talk normally to, say, Siri or Amazon Echo, for instance. And what it allows candidates to do, or people who want to apply, is to ask questions. Where have you got jobs? And you just type that in. You know, how's my application process going? What's it like working there? So they can use natural language, and it doesn't have to be expensive. The Ask Jeff bot, I think, was probably quite expensive, so they did loads of attraction. But I know a housing association who did something very similar, and it cost less than £5,000 for them to have that chat bot, and they got some much better results in terms of Facebook and people applying via that route. Gamification, again, is one of those sort of hackneyed phrases, but it's serious games which help paint a picture for the candidate. If you thought about you're doing volume recruitment, you're having an open day, why not have an exercise where you can see how the candidates are interacting? You know, who are the natural leaders, who are communicating well? That's gamifying that process. There was a French postal worker company who had a problem where 75% of candidates would drop out. Once they'd recruited them, there was a 75% dropout because actually they were having to do lots of early starts as a postman. You're getting up early. It's the time where you're normally maybe having breakfast with your children. Well, you can't do that anymore. So they, on their website, had a little sort of comic strip painting a picture of what it's like in the day of the life of a successful postal worker, with the positives, but the drawbacks as well. And that increased their retention, I think, 2 or 3 times. So they were retaining much more people because they painted a picture. They were honest about what it's going to be like working in that organisation. You know, Domino's do things on their website as part of the recruitment process around building a pizza. And we've all seen the GCHQ questions that they have advertised in print, where they're looking for spies and they ask these cryptic questions and you have to try and solve them. You know, if you think about a candidate, they're seeing the same format of a job ad every single time. What can you do differently to help you stand out and also to help you recruit and retain the right people? Flexible working is on the rise. It's, you know, as we have this low employment levels, we really do need to make sure that we're broadening that pool as much as possible. So home workers, mums who are returning to work, dads who are returning to work, you know, does it have to be a full-time role? Could there be a job share opportunity? Diversity, it's obviously something, again, that Jonathan spoke about. It's really important to get it right. I'm sure the communities that you are dealing with, either internal stakeholders or external stakeholders, are diverse. You need to make sure that you can talk to them on their terms, in their language, and in a way that they feel comfortable. So diversity has been key for a long while, and it's going to stay there. But everything else that we've said in terms of today's trends is still relevant. How you use social media, employer brand, etc.